Minutes before, the usual post-practice commotion had filled the Indiana Fever's locker room. The sound of music streaming from a portable speaker, teammates giving each other high fives, and Sophie Cunningham's one-liners that caused the entire room to erupt in laughter. However, when it did occur, the change was complete and immediate. Something heavy was crushing down on each shoulder in the room, as though the air itself had been emptied out. Sophie proceeded at the methodical pace of someone who understood the gravity of what she was going to say. She didn't have to ask for quiet. As soon as she put her feet in front of the room, it became silent. Of the cameras, something new lingered in her face, but it was still the ferocious, unblinking game face that had faced down the league's hardest batters. It wasn't competitive adrenaline. She prayed she didn't have to give the serious news that someone was carrying. She spoke in the control you hear when someone is suppressing a wave of emotion is steady, almost too steady. This had nothing to do with injuries, trades, or game strategy. She assured the press, her teammates, and the audience. Something far more intimate was involved. Lexi Hull moved up next to her, her hand brushing, before the murmurs could rise. Her hand went to the microphone, Sophie's. A silent demonstration of solidarity. Lexi's voice was quiet yet passionate. Knowing that they were going to blow up the greatest story of the season made every statement more poignant. The franchise player Caitlin Clark, who is responsible for the surge in ticket sales and the capacity of arenas, would be resigning from the court permanently. Just a personal situation, no date, no information. There was a deafening silence afterwards. The type where the buzz of the lights above is audible. The kind where the words weigh so heavily on your chest that it becomes difficult to breathe. LeBron James is currently perhaps the greatest basketball player of all time. He has been keeping an eye on this scenario. Only a very small percentage of men and women are able to fulfill their desire of participating in professional sports. Additionally, we have mature men and women who are doing everything in their power to ensure that doesn't occur. There is nothing more bizarre than it. The announcement, however, spread like wildfire outside that locker room. It was more than just trending within 10 minutes. In the WNBA community, it was the only topic of conversation. Fan theories, hurriedly put together proof threads, and wild speculation erupted on X. Slow-motion video footage of the press conference was all over Instagram. Comments from strangers who are amateur lip readers assert that Sophie's jaw tensed right before she moved aside. They claim to have heard Lex's voice crack on Caitlin's name. TikTok was a completely different animal. Dramatic music and fan edits have amassed hundreds of thousands of views in a matter of minutes. The Fever's public relations team couldn't keep up with the rumors. Rumors of a road trip incident that has not been made public. Speculations concerning private hardships, even fictitious plots that have thousands of shares despite having no genuine foundation. Sophie and Lexie, meanwhile, reaffirmed that they were defending their teammates' privacy while displaying the poise that makes headlines. Courteous smiles and strong refusals to go into further detail. Nevertheless, their devotion was fuel for the flames. Admirers started searching for clues they had overlooked in recent games. The infrequent times Caitlin's post-game interviews seemed to go by more quickly. Her eyes didn't quite meet her smile. She appeared little less energized. Some diehards brought up the one heated moment during warm-ups that was captured on camera. Sideline camera and promptly dismissed as a joke or the Instagram story she shared late at night. Focus on the important things with a black backdrop and white lettering. It had sounded like a chant of encouragement at the time. It seemed like a warning now. Okay, so let's be clear. Caitlin Clark is getting fouled at a ridiculous pace. Numerous referees are ignoring the brutality of some of the infractions, and the women who are fouling her are doing it on purpose. The WNBA community thrives on mysteries like this one, which captivate everyone in their quest to uncover the secret. Additionally, Sophie Cunningham played a significant role in this time for those who have followed her career. She has always been the reserved, sort of behind the scenes. As a player, her identity has been formed in the furnace. The unrepentant guardian, the player with a blade that can pierce the cacophony of the court. Sophie had made it very evident from Caitlin Clark's first day in Fever colors that anyone attempting to rough up the rookie would have to first go through her. In addition to speaking, she demonstrated her support by intervening during contentious situations, clapping back at commentators who dared to attack Caitlyn, and even calling out and officiating in ways she felt were unfair. That's why it felt like a gut strike when her voice broke just a little bit during this news. The Sophie who stares down her opponents without blinking was not this Sophie. This was Sophie without her typical armor, asking everyone to move aside so Caitlyn might have the room she so obviously needed. Her assistance has been weaved into every little aspect over the past several weeks, including organizing warm-up attire with Lexie before to difficult home games, highlighting Caitlyn's most significant plays on the internet, and looking her in the eyes during huddles as if to reassure her in private, "I've got you." She was now directing that same devotion at the media, ready to endure any inquiries, criticism if it meant Caitlyn didn't have to. Basketball was no longer the only topic of conversation. It was about teammates who have fought together on the court and their unbreakable code. Additionally, I get really annoyed when individuals say, "She isn't the league's spokesperson." Who would it be? What? No, our league contains some very talented and well-known individuals. I'm not disparaging them in any way. Like, our league is full with badasses. As in, hell. Yes to that. That's fine with me. However, you're as stupid as hell if you try to claim that she isn't the face of our league or that we wouldn't be where we are now without her. Yes. You're as stupid as in that press conference. If Sophie was the spark, Lexi Hull was the silent, purposeful weight that made the room bend closer. Lexie has never been the headline-chasing teammate. She is the player who uses precise language in her game, smart reading, deft movement, and the capacity to find her moment without vying for attention. Therefore, there wasn't a dramatic takeover when she interrupted Sophie in the middle of a statement. It was a silent shift that made a big impression. Although she spoke steadily and calmly, there was a noticeable tremble in the back of her voice, the kind that results from a conflict between the heart and the mind. The bond between Lexie and Caitlyn this season has been particularly noteworthy for viewers who have been paying careful attention. Unmistakable but subtle. The fast look to the bench following a defensive stop, the additional high five following a huge shot. After a game winner, Lexie was always one of the first to embrace Caitlyn. Their relationship was more than just their stats. The tiny things, like the routine of practices, bus journeys, and post-game cooldowns, pointed to a mutual respect. Because of this, even in the absence of specifics, Lex's speech sounded like a private confession of grief. She had been stepping into her own in recent weeks, making confident three-pointers, making incisive defensive reads, and even emerging as a modest fashion icon with Sophie during pre-game tunnels. Social media was ablaze with their well-coordinated performances. However, all of that vanished into the background at that precise moment. Her nonverbal cues conveyed it before she did. This has nothing to do with headlines or points. Standing by someone she cares about despite the cameras rolling and the public demanding answers they refused to provide was the theme of this. Has a larger perspective on the game, evidently through the platform she developed for herself, and then that's switched over to the game. It's enormous, I guess. And I believe that if I miss, she will undoubtedly reply, "You got the next one." Especially since I'm a point guard and make a lot of passes that result in shots. I feel like I can rely on her to keep me upbeat and confident. What made things more tense than Caitlyn Clark's absolute quiet was anything. Her absence was more noticeable than any statement could have been in a time when famous athletes use Instagram to break news and when tweets can change perceptions before teams even publish a press release. She had been jokingly arguing with Sophie about her lack of online presence only a few weeks prior, throwing out. She joked with reporters that she would rather concentrate on basketball than likes while sharing behind-the-scenes photos from practice. It appeared to be a throwaway sentence at the time. It now appears as a prelude to a disappearance, a breadcrumb. In retrospect, the warning flags were evident when watching her most recent interviews. Shorter responses, with her signature spark slightly waning such that it was easy to spot abrupt shifts away from intimate subjects. She appeared to have been performing at her best while gradually withdrawing behind an imperceptible wall. Additionally, her vacant seat during the press conference wasn't just a blank space. It had a distinct presence. Even without a single word from her, that gap demanded attention, compelling every camera and reporter to notice the lack. Her quiet turned into a blank canvas that could be painted with any notion, rumor, or whispered source. Not just any player was absent from the starting lineup. This was the Fever's face, the league's biggest attraction, which is why ticket sales were smashing records and TV viewership were increasing. Her absence changed more than just the box score. In real time, it changed the WNBA's gravitational attraction. Competing teams hurried to modify their strategies. Whole stories were reorganized by media outlets. Additionally, planning sessions held deep within the Fever's locker room had to abruptly adjust for the loss of the player that all of the systems had been constructed around. Some try to claim that she isn't the face of our league and that without her, our league wouldn't be where it is now. You're as stupid as yes. You're as stupid as, however, if the public witnessed a team preparing to fail, the atmosphere behind closed doors was a completely different matter. Yes, Caitlin Clark's disappearance had left a void, but it had also sparked a rebellious spirit inside the Fever. With body language that exuded the Trias vibe, Sophie Cunningham and Lexi Hull arrived to practice speaking more clearly and loudly in huddles. It was evident in the additional repetitions after drills and in the manner in which they separated younger colleagues for brief motivational speeches, in the nearly symbolic wristbands with Caitlin's number. They weren't acting as though the loss wasn't painful. They were focusing it and erecting a wall around it. Their silent focal point was social media. On their stories, old video of Caitlin's greatest plays appear. Pictures from before the game where her presence was felt despite her absence. Every small act was an indication that this team was not going to give up. The stakes were higher because of the date. With a string of significant victories, the Fever had finally turned the story from one of reconstruction to contender. Those gains now were in danger. Every game that came up was a test of determination as much as skill. The Fever would have to win in a different way, grinding possessions, locking in defensively, and relying on a common goal that extended beyond basketball, if Caitlin's gravity weren't pulling defenders and her enthusiasm wasn't igniting the fans. Additionally, that, above all, Sophie and Lexie appeared prepared to take on the challenge. That has happened a few times. A steal is also present. 3 turnovers in a row. The steal is the key. The 3-point attempt is taken away by McDonald's pressure up the line. But the truth is always there, regardless of how strong the front is. The future of the Fever currently depends on something that only a small group of individuals within the organization can affect. The story now includes the mystery around Caitlin's circumstances. A whirlwind of intrigue in which a new theory is born every day that there is no update. Is this a temporary pause? Absence at the end of the season? The initial sign of a more significant change in her career? Outside the inner circle, no one is aware. Not the game tape analysis analysts. Not the supporters who have chronicled the season's highs and lows. Not even the journalists who are searching for that elusive leak. And perhaps that's the idea. Perhaps the only way to protect her from the constant upheaval of public opinion is to keep it hidden. What started out as a gut-punch statement has turned into one of the most significant mysteries of the WNBA season. It is as much a narrative about friendship and loyalty as it is about basketball. Lexi Hull and Sophie Cunningham have made their positions clear. They'll tolerate the queries, conjecture, and even the venom of criticism. The rest of the league, the fans, and the media will have to endure the most difficult thing in sports if it means Caitlin can handle whatever storm she's in on her own terms. Hold on. Hold off until the time comes when, whether it will be next season, next week, or next month, Caitlin Clark withdraws from the court to observe the amount of the game and the league itself may have evolved in her lack of presence.